What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you. Kind of a bonus one because this whole week was just loaded with big releases. But there was one in the underground that I definitely wanted to check out. A lot of people are bringing it up in the comments. So here we are. We are going to go over the debut full-length from Slimelord, Chytridiomycosis Relinquished. I actually had to look up how to say that first word. This also comes out on the 8th of March on 20 bucks spin. This band formed in England in 2019. This is, again, their first full-length, though they have 3 EPs. I remember seeing their EPs floating around in distros, and I never pounced them. Either that or they weren't on CD and they were on tape or something like that.
Right.
Like, nope. And for those that don't know this band, which, I mean, they are relatively new, this is deathdoom, but it's a lot more too. This also features current and former members of bands like Cryptic Shift. In fact, 3 members of Cryptic Shift are in this band, as well as Horrified and Sewer Fiend, which all these bands I am familiar with. All these bands are ridiculously heavy, and that was enough of a lure for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Cryptic Shift. I've heard of these guys, but again, just kind of, like, oh, well, I'll hear it eventually. I know some people in the comments said Jammin John's probably going to like this. Jammin John likes it.
We're also very obviously both Parallax Occlusion fans because this was unplanned. This was totally unplanned. He came by, I was already wearing this shirt. He was like, man, unzipped his hoodie.
Right? Found this, like...
I told him he had to go home and change, but he wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is his house, so he's got an arsenal of shirts here. I brought 3 shirts for the day, and this is fitting. So
I don't think I was being unreasonable.
He could have changed, but he didn't. So
No.
yeah, we're both wearing Parallax Occlusion shirts, but we're both fans of that band too. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, might be the first time we've both worn the same band. I don't know. Probably have to go back.
At least on camera. I mean, I don't know. It happens, man. We go to the same shows. We end up buying the same shirts. It's bound to happen. Here we are. It happened. So, getting back to Jammin John likey the Slimelord. He likey the Slimelord. There's a great reason for that. This band is dissonant. And everyone knows that Jammin John likey dissonant. Layered to absolutely the 9s. The first song, The Beckoning Bell, opens up with weird noises.
I don't even know what the hell made that. I just wrote, what the fuck?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Weird noises, maybe frogs, kind of drippy. And then massive, cavernous, dissonant melody. Just blah.
Now, frogs kind of make sense amongst all the other stuff in here that didn't entirely make a lot of sense, because there's a lot of that too. But apparently, Chytridiomycosis is a bacteria that causes an infection or a disease in amphibians. And there are like lots of swampy, soundscapes. There's definitely frogs in here. I heard frogs more than once on here. But the atmosphere, the sound of this, it is absolutely massive sounding. And I think that is large in part to the fact that this is mixed and mastered by one Damien Herring of Horrendous. And he did a fantastic job in here. Sonically, this is just insanely heavy, but very lush, very well mixed. But from song to song, you get like different sides of this band. The Beckoning Bell is almost just kind of bonkers. The transitions are nuts. Like, you start off with the slow, lumbering, lurching riffs. The guitar tone is thicker than a snicker. Like, it's just pure murk and filth. Lots of dissonant, lurching melodies, and constantly layered. Like, this is just layered and layered with riffs and slime, snot, other just gross things.
Yeah, I mean, like, immediately you just feel like you need to take a shower. There's so much. Layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of noise and guitar and odd whispers and groans and wow.
I mean, like, you could definitely say it's very cavernous, but like in terms of like just the vocals alone, the vocals take a lot of different approaches. You have like long labored growls, screams, again, tons of reverb to make that cavernous effect, especially the haunting gasps that are on Batrachomorpha Resurrection's Chamber. That's a mouthful. But it's what they do with the vocals in the mix. There's a lot of panning back and forth and then kind of front and back. So you get this very ghostly surrounding sort of effect.
Yeah, it's almost like a whirlwind. It's almost like they took the pan and just moved it around in a circle, and it constantly moves almost in every song. Like sometimes you get vocals that are in the background, and then they're really out front, and then they drum back, and then you hear them in the left and the right, and it's a full like sonic assault.
Yeah, and the effect is you kind of get this weird sort of like off-kilter effect in the listen, and that is compounded by a lot of the very strange transitions, like the beckoning bell. While it starts off slow and lumbering, there's a almost kind of death grind fit that pops up in the middle of it, and then you go into just dissonant kind of jazzy transitions, like a little bit like Imperial Triumphant. It kind of just catches you off guard. But what also catches you off guard, because a good chunk of this is very weird and atonal, and how they blend melodies is just, it's bonkers. But there are moments in here of like some legit really cool hooks that are a little bit more traditional. Gut Brain Axis kind of sticks to like a more straightforward, like I would say almost like melodic death doom to like funeral doom pattern. Like there's a lot of stuff in that song that's very similar to bands like Worm, My Dying Bride. There's some really good melodies in there. In fact, probably one of my favorite guitar solos is on that song in particular. But then it takes a hard shift into like funeral doom, like the big tritonal descending single notes, very slow, very labored, very much along the lines of like esoteric or skepticism. And then Tidal Slaughter Marsh, which is just an interesting combination of words there. That one kind of goes a little bit more straightforward death metal. Like this is probably like the riffiest song on there, where you get like a lot of just like 90s death metal on there. And I definitely heard some bolt thrower moments on there, a little bit of
towards the end.
Yeah, benediction, stuff like that. But that's also again compounded with the weird atmosphere, and I would almost call it progressive, maybe?
I don't know. These songs are structured so weirdly. It's not your typical, verse, chorus, bridge thing. Like every time there's a transition as you get later on in the album, they isolate instruments. So you get like a lot of like weird just drum and bass jams, and again, always with the atmosphere. Always something going on in the background. But when they transition between parts, it's always like an instrumental jam. Yeah,
there is a lot of isolation, or like the use of like quieter moments going into like the bigger, heavier moments. Any empty space on here is kind of filled with like creepy uncertainty. There's constantly like something in the background bubbling or wisping, gasping. Frogs occasionally too. But yeah, like there's never a moment on here where you feel like kind of completely at ease. Maybe the lone moment where it kind of lures you into a false sense of security is on Bactromorpha Resurrection's Chamber. That song is very interesting in the way that it starts. Like you have, droning ambience, and then what I would describe as like kind of like the brightest riffs on the album. Like it's oddly pleasant.
Yeah, this weird like harmonized jam, but it sounds like there's a moment of light, like the first time light has creeped through on this dark album. But then after that moment of light, the entire song just slowly drags you back down. Like it just descends constantly, and it's never abrupt. It's like slowly creeping down a hill.
Yeah, it's very gradual, and you can kind of hear it as it's doing it. Like it does sound, again, like a little bit more bright, kind of like shoegazy at times.
A little bit.
But you notice like the melodies start getting like a little bit more atonal. Like they stick with like a good bass riff.
Yeah.
But it's the melodies around it, like you kind of notice them starting to morph and twist. It's like kind of being like just lured into what you think is a cave, and then no, it's a giant Venus flytrap monster, and it just eats you and you die. And sometimes the more quiet moments are used like directly to play off of like the heavier moments, like the hissing more. This song has like these odd kind of noodly crawling melodies that are like a little bit cleaner, albeit like the vocals kind of groaning behind it definitely reminds you that you're still in for it later. But those pair off really well against these strange heavy sections, and it's this kind of back and forth sort of thing in the beginning that, I don't know, it kind of sets us up to be, again, just very uncertain, unpredictable.
The second time it comes back, though, it is heavy. And this record is not without extremely heavy moments. The song Splayed Mudscape, I think, is one of my favorite tracks. And that song is heavy as fuck. That drummer loves the floor tom, and every time there is a descending chug into hell, the floor toms are accented, and it is just crushing. Just soul-crushing heaviness. Those chugs are very Morbid Angel.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moments of like just flat-out brutality, like at the end of the Beckoning Bell, like it just hangs on to this disgusting slow breakdown that actually continuously keeps getting slower up until it's very bizarre atmospheric end. And on the other side of that, back to the Hissing Moor, which sounds like such a lovely place to hang out in, there are like, again, violent fits of blast beats. It's almost kind of death grindish. So you get like different kinds of extremity because, man, like this album is just strange. It's really hard to get a hold of at times, but you are sort of like hypnotized and kind of lured into it. Like it's not like your standard haunting atmosphere where like, oh, this is creepy. My house might be haunted now. Like this is like, I don't know what's going on. The landscape is twisting and shifting. Was that tentacle always there? I don't know. It's just weird and it's just hard to describe.
Well, it's like a bad trip. It's like almost strangely psychedelic. Like you're like, what? What just happened? Where did that come from? That's gross. Oh, but it's moving.
Is it moving at me?
Is it moving at me? Is it coming towards me? No, I don't have any money. No, I don't have any money.
Well, time to push my buddy down the ground and run. And again, like while this is listed as Death Doom, like that's all the archives are saying about it. There's, again, a lot more. Like, I would even go back to saying, like, there are progressive elements in here. Like, you listen to, like, the riff patterns, like, the weird chordal choices. Like, there's a lot of just strange atonal stuff. And how they, like, I don't know if harmonize is the right word, but they fit them together in layers to create something that is still kind of musical, but also makes you feel like your brain is full of hornets.
Like, some of it reminded me a lot of, like, Blood Incantation. If Blood Incantation was a Death Doom band.
Or, I mean, even more to the point, I would say, like, Spectral Voice, which I guess maybe this is, like, the Spectral Voice to, Cryptic Shift. Like, maybe. This is their, like, oh, this is our very different project that's still kind of similar. But there's also, like, classic tropes of, like, disembowelment on here, too. Like, big, droning, heavy riffs and, like, clean melodies on top. But, again, there's a lot more, like, weird looseness to it. Splayed Mudscape has, I would say, like, one of the coolest, like, signature riffs on here, but it's not necessarily the riff that really kind of drew me in after a while. Like, it's a good kind of crawling, little atonal, but it kind of sets a really cool vibe, and there's an awesome groove that's behind it, like a good, like, dinner bell ride, but it's the bass line behind it. Like, the bass line kind of circles and entwines it, and I don't think it repeats like the same way for every measure. So, like, again, there's this sort of weird looseness to it.
The bassist almost just seems to play whatever he wants. I mean, you definitely hear him sticking with things more, but it's in the jam moments. It's in the isolation moments where it's just drum and bass jams. But, like, beyond that, with these constant descending, atonal, dissonant riffs, the bass is just, like, on a walk. Just like whatever, and somehow it works.
And sometimes I think that really works well in transitions, especially on Tidal Slaughter Marsh. There are some just wild ascending and descending transitions between like the big riffy moments. It's almost like you're on a rickety rundown roller coaster at night and there's like no lights on, and you definitely shouldn't be there because that thing's going to fall apart and kill you. But the ride might be fun up until the point you inevitably die.
And then the album closes with probably the brightest moment of the record. Closes with the song Heroic Demise, and it's filled with like these big tribal drum sections and bendy tremolos, and overall it sounds kind of brighter. It's almost like you survived the album.
Yeah, you didn't get bit by like a three-eyed snake or whatever the hell lurks in the Slaughter Marsh. That's probably the name of it. I don't know, it could be the Hissing Moor. Both sound unpleasant. But Heroic Demise, I don't know, like that song, it's one of the more straightforward ones. It's a really cool instrumental. Honestly, it has some of the biggest melodies on here. It has, again, like kind of that shoegazy effect where it's like droning tremolos on top of a riff that repeats throughout the entire song, which is uncommon on here because a lot of this is just, you know, weird time signature changes and just riff
with tempo changes and weird shit fits.
But if it wasn't for like the little bit more death doom vibe to it, at least in terms of like the main melody, this honestly shares a lot of characteristics with like Cave In, I think. Like it kind of has like their very large, very soundscapey sound when it comes down to their more like, you know, lush tracks they do. And it's interesting in terms of like just a songwriting dynamic that wasn't explored in the rest of the album too, because it's kind of holding the course but building on the entire thing up until you get to a big grand, you know, big finish with, you know, crash and rolls and all that. Kind of feels a little odd for that track. Like that track feels like it could have just like faded off into some like big ambient swell of just lush synths or something like that. But well, this album's kind of all about like odd choices and kind of just making death doom very strange. And for the most part, I think it really excels at it. There are times in here where I just kind of got lost in the swampy, weird confusion.
The Beckoning Bell.
Yeah.
That's really easy to get lost in. Yeah, definitely in the Beckoning Bell, that first track. Before you know what hits you with this record and before you know what to expect, there are many times where you're just like, what the fuck is happening?
The Hissing Moor, too, that weird back and forth they do in the beginning, it's odd. Like, it takes a while to get a hold of some of these songs, and I admit, look, this will probably take multiple listens to probably fully get, because, again, there's so much going on. But for the most part, I find this very intriguing, and I want to jam this again, like, a lot. Like, there's more to understand in this Slaughter Marsh of Hissing Moors and stuff, whatever it is. It sounds like a horrible place that I want to revisit, oddly. So, overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. I really dig this. Even in its more bizarre, sort of like jazzy transitions and just like dissonant oddness, I still found most of this very engaging. And I think the songwriting in here is really just bonkers, but bonkers in a good way.
Unique.
Like, I'm not like, my God, why'd you throw that together? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Oh, we're already moving on. I don't get that effect very much. I get that this is definitely more experimental, but there's also a lot of stuff that kind of anchors it back to the listener with like just clever melodies and such. Again, Gut Brain Axis and Title Slaughter Marsh. Those songs are riffy as hell, but they also include a lot of just absolutely nuts transitions. This is just a flat out weird listen, and the atmosphere, it's kind of psychedelic, but not like the good kind. Like the kind where someone finds you in a park naked screaming at a tree, like that kind of psychedelic. But overall, I mean, if you're a big fan of, I mean, Blood Incantation, I would say Imperial Triumphant too, Worm, Spectral Voice, any of those bands, if you like your death doom strange, this is your band. Definitely check them out.
It's definitely a solid 4 for me. You guys were correct. All that said Jammin' John would like this album. This definitely feeds my dissonance monster. Just nom nom nom. Dissonant, cavernous, man, definitely strange. I think it's very well done. The transitions, I think, are the most well done. Like, they're definitely planned out, and I like how sometimes the transitions, like, shut everything off. It's like, it calms everything down, and it's just this weird, jammy, like, isolated section, kind of like just to cleanse the palate, so to speak, before it ramps back up and kicks in the door with a slimy, 3-armed, 4-eyed creature that doesn't like you.
It's a frog.
I don't know what it is. This album is definitely heavy. There's definitely a lot of groove. Very catchy, too, oddly, in many spots. Gut Brain Axis, Splayed Mudscape, Bactrochromorpha, Resurrection's Chamber. I think that's how you say it. I don't care. But there's a lot of very catchy moments in there. The leads, too. While they're not really prominent in this album, Title Slaughtermarsh and Gut Brain Axis both have these really cool, intricate leads. As creepy and as unsettling as this album is, it's definitely entertaining. And like I said, feeds the atonal dissonant monster hand over foot. Like, you took the dissonant monster to a buffet and you said, okay, just go hog wild, and he did. Like, I'm happy about that. Yeah, if you're a fan of Imperial Triumphant, Bluedos Nord, Incantation, Blood Incantation, and a litany of other odd bands, definitely Cryptic Shift. Like, I can definitely hear Cryptic Shift. Parallax Occlusion. Yeah, check this record out. Good job, Slimelord. Please tour the U.S. Do it. Come here. Please.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below at thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel, up in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you were looking for Thralls of Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have new shirts. We have old shirts that are discounted, provided we have your size. We also have hats, too. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
And now we get to the big odd thank you part where we thank you guys for tuning in. I noticed there have been a lot of new faces lately. That's awesome. We appreciate you. Welcome to Thralls of Metal. We've got tons of stuff coming your way.
It only gets dumber.
Right. We only get stupider. Watch. Anyway, tons of album reviews, collection updates. What's John Jamming is coming back soon here. I'm almost out of the woods. For those of you that know, great. For those that don't, also great. Almost out of the woods. What's John Jamming is coming back. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Thank you. Thank you guys for subscribing and commenting and supporting this channel. It means the absolute world to us. Thralls of Metal is a lot larger than I think either of us ever thought it would be, and we appreciate you, and it's you guys that keep us going, so thank you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Tons of stuff coming your way, and yeah, it looks like March is going to be loaded with pretty awesome releases, so definitely stay tuned. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.